welcome to the Citizens Chat Show here on Civic Space TV, streaming on YouTube. I'm your host, Judith Team. We're so glad that you could make time to join us on this edition of the show. Today, our focus is on the NRM Primaries, who wins, who loses, and what it means for Uganda. But before I welcome my panelists to dive into this discussion, I'd also like to let you know that here on the show, we are extending our deepest sympathies to the family of the late Professor Kanye Ha, who passed on just a few days ago, and to all citizens of Uganda for this profound loss. As you all know, Professor Kanye Ha was a colossus for constitutionalism in Uganda. And I will ask my panelists just very quickly later on to reflect on his life and legacy and what, of course, his passing means to Uganda. But before that, I will start by welcoming them, of course, from my immediate left, Dr. Robert Ojiambo, who is the head of the History Department at Kyambongo University. You're most welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you.
Next to him is Dr. Bireete, Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. Always a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, and good afternoon, viewers.
Also, we have Honorable George Odongo, member of the East African Legislative Assembly. George, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon.
Mr. Joseph Ochieno, political commentator and UBC Idelogue. Good afternoon, Joseph.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Last but not least, retired Major Awich Pollar, Director for External Affairs at the NRM Secretariat and advocate of the High Court. Good afternoon and welcome to the show, Major.
From the mighty NRM, greetings.
Well, we shall be discussing just how mighty the NRM is, looking at everything that has transpired on Thursday during the NRM primaries, but that is later. Very quickly, your thoughts and reflections on the passing of, not on the passing, on the person, the man, the late Professor Kanye Ha. Starting with you in just 3 minutes.
Yeah, Kanye Ha was, you can't describe him as a lawyer, academician, politician. He was just everything. The first time I interacted with this man was in his book, The Constitutional and the Political History of Uganda. At that time, I was a student writing my dissertation for a master's degree in 2003. The title, The Constitutional Challenges of Democracy in Uganda, and therefore, he became my major source, and I even had to look for him and interview him personally. And since then, we developed a friendship on which I'm going to best to describe him. So he was a very interesting person. Journalists who have interviewed Prof. Kanye Ha have found it very difficult because you don't go with your questionnaire and he answers your questions. He will instead ask you questions. And by the time you leave that place, you may be prompted to write another article. A man who should have, after studying law, he should have remained in the university. He strayed into other things, in my view. He had a background, of course, after studying in his village, he went to Mwiri, he went to Portsmouth for his first degree, then he went to work in the UK for his PhD. Of course, when you listen to George, he was passionate about fairness. He always wanted the people to be fair. And he was brutally truthful, very brutal, brutally truthful. The many times I've interacted with him, there is one thing that has really been disturbing him. The judgment of the Supreme Court, where they had agreed up to a certain time that the election was fraudulent and they were going to nullify it. And there is a judge that he will pretend that he will not tell you the name. But by the time you finish the discussion, he has mentioned the name 5 times. So you pretend also not to have heard the name. And since he didn't publicly want to mention the name or not mention the name, but there was a judge from his place there that he has died. The last time I met him was last year when he was celebrating Thanksgiving at his home, and he still mentioned that name. He said, that man let Uganda down. He was a bright man from my place. I trusted him. In fact, that he believes that that man even told people that George did not vote for us, because when they are agreeing on the ruling, they don't know who will say what before they make the ruling. So that judge, he did not forgive him. And for those who have been watching Kanye, after that judgment, his life never remained the same. He lost his job at the International Human Rights. He was never appointed on anything again. And he has been, I don't want to say the word bitter, but he spoke with bitterness, but sometimes I would be thinking that that is the Kinkizi way of speaking sometimes. So George has been for fairness, has been for justice, brutally truthful, and he loved the country called Uganda to an extent that he did not want, he has been, of recent, he did not like this thing of Vandimwe and what have you, and was saying this was misleading the country, and many other small things. A nationalist, and for that matter, he is an icon.
Thank you.
He's an icon, and may his soul rest in eternal peace.
Thank you, Dr. Jamba. Dr. Sarah, your quick thoughts.
You know, us in the sphere of constitutionalism, we've lost our good father for constitutionalism in Uganda. Professor Kanye Ha excelled in whatever he did. Of course, as an academic, he excelled. As a politician, he was a Minister of Commerce, Justice, and then Attorney General. In the hierarchy of judiciary, he also excelled, because other than being a judge on the highest panel, the rest is political. As to whether you can be appointed Deputy Chief Justice or Chief Justice is up to the political powers. But when you are a Justice of the Supreme Court, that's the highest you can go on merit, on your own. And his judgments speak volumes. There were always landmarks, especially in areas of jurisprudence in the country, so he always expanded jurisprudence. He did work also in the earlier years in constitutional making in Kenya and other countries. Then the African Court for Human and People's Rights, and of course his write-ups, which will live forever. Each time I would be on a show discussing constitutional issues, if there is a book he thinks I needed to read, I would find the book at office. He will have sent that book to me. He helped also enrich my understanding beyond what we interface with in academic spheres. He would always call and say, tell Sarah to call me. He would send people, tell Sarah to call me on this. And so that was the personal interaction I had with him on constitutionalism. But beyond, the country has lost a great brain in the Constituent Assembly making, constitution making process. His contributions, the future children of this country will still refer to them. Whatever he touched, I think he gave it his best. Towards his retirement, he was deemed as controversial, because also the things he believed in together with colleagues were being abandoned at high speed. So his latest court appearances were about challenging a proposal to remove bail and the expulsion of Honorable Zake from Parliament, the way he was removed from commissioner. So you can see that he was a fighter for constitutionalism, rule of law, human rights, up to the last detail of his life. May he rest in peace.
Thank you. George, your namesake George
Yeah.
has passed on. Your reflections about his life and
Yeah,
legacy.
I didn't interact with Professor in person, but I interacted with his works. Professor Kanyamba probably represents the cohort of some of the finest people we have in the country. And interestingly, when I was reading his background, I realized that he went to Mwiri,
The only school.
and you know, and again that just underlines
The college.
something really very important. Most of our great minds, our great that cohort, most of them went to different traditional schools. So you'll find somebody from the north went and studied in Kigezi, somebody from Kigezi studied in the central, or others went and studied in the north, others went to, I remember one time speaking to the late General Aronda Nyakairima, and he told me he was in Gulu High School, in Kitgum High School, you know.
He spoke very fluent actually.
You know, so this,
The UPC person.
so the idea that we would have people actually studying in different parts of the country allowed us to appreciate and actually become national in our perspective. And I think that is what Kanyahamba embodied. He was one person who spoke out his mind, and really was very courageous to say the things that many people would feel uncomfortable to say. So I think that we celebrate the courage with which he spoke out his mind, irrespective of whether you agreed with him or not. And I feel sometimes that is the kind of courage that we lack in our spaces. There are things that require that level of courage, and I think we need to, and honesty. Whether or not we agree with them, at least let somebody bring it out in the public space and let's engage constructively. Kanyamba also, in my view, really had a huge cognitive reserve. They say, you know, you can only have a cognitive reserve when you engage your mind. You know, even at old age, it comes to help you in your old age, that your mind continues to be sharp.
Even in his death, at
You
the
know?
point of death, he was still mentally astute.
Exactly. So he really, it is Professor Kanyahamba who intrigued me and made me to get interested in the rulings of the court, particularly in the case of the presidential elections petition. Yeah. For me to get down into the nuts and bolts of that ruling. Because initially I was only looking at the substantiality tests and so on and so forth. But after his public, outbursts on some of the controversies around that particular ruling, I got interested, and I think that it has informed me quite a bit. So he is one person who has influenced, whose footprints will remain, whose works are indelible in our public space, and we commiserate with the family, and may his soul rest in eternal peace.
Thank you, Judge. Joseph?
Yeah, the death occurred while I was, in fact, on the day when I buried my only surviving uncle, maternal uncle, Uncle Wino, in Tororo. And so it's unfortunate that I haven't yet been around the family, but I will go. As it happens, I've been to his home. As it happens, the massive celebration of his life the other year, we're there with my other powerful Miri Obi, Ndugurugunda and others. And yes, you saw the power, the unusual, extraordinary power of George Kanyihamba. And lawyers can be very interesting people. I want to tell you that towards his end, another lawyer in Akenadoko, while we were in exile in UK, talked about and emphasized this idea of we must celebrate lives when we are still around. He and two others I will not also mention for the moment. Interestingly, it was very important that we had the opportunity to celebrate this man's life at the time. Now, it turns out that another fantastic double lawyer, Olaro Tunu, was his student. And in an amazing way, as you say, he managed to get Olaro Tunu to give the keynote address. Olaro, of course, is my brother, and I can tell you that when Olaro spoke, I was wowed. Not about his ability, which I know, but the context within which he challenged Professor Kanyihamba, and I think I should be looking for that speech, and I think we should be looking for that speech to roar it around. That said, one sad thing is that possibly 5 years too late to have him be a special guest here on this panel, as it were. It would have been a very interesting stuff. But that said, also, some of his contemporaries around whom I want to link very quickly, some of his principles are the likes of Miriam Matembe. Kanyihamba, in the early days of which I didn't know him, but the early part of the early 90s, what I knew about him was the disappointment of this lawyer who happens to be a legal advisor to a regime that had banned political parties and things were happening in northern Uganda. Talk about the lessons we learned from these people. Say it as it is, you know. And so that's George Kanyihamba, legal advisor to NRM. How can you handle stuff? Fast forward, notwithstanding anything and everything else, this guy reaches a critical peak, recognizes that, look, you know, the direction is not the direction I want or we thought, takes a position and boldly comes out and is the Kanyihamba that has died. My important lesson, therefore, is that, look, all of us do make mistakes and all of us will take directions, but depends on how you genuinely commit yourselves to those that you do. And Kanyihamba, once he took that position, is actually what George is talking about. He went with it up to close to his deathbed, completely convinced, and in any case, I think almost wanted to play catch up, that we wasted our time, we wasted our lives. Amazingly, as a matter of interest, the majority of the people who would want to follow this guy are not only predominantly young people, but young lawyers. So, an extraordinary stuff that we've lost him, but an extraordinary stuff on the lessons. And finally, just the point that George made, this thing about the courage of the position he took on that ruling. Was it 2006 election thing? Not only how he did it and how he did it with the rest of his colleagues, but how he managed to be able to go ahead and articulate. It's a bit unfortunate that history thus far may not judge them as fairly, but history is going to judge these guys excessively fairly in future. As it happened, I know that allegedly he was supposed to have been appointed Supreme Court, Chief Justice in a certain Indian Ocean nation states, and that required the support of the nation state called the Republic of Uganda, and on that there was a decline. It's allegedly suggested as such, and if it is, Ugandans at this material time we need to be reflecting on how we do businesses, particularly those of us when we have opportunity to power.
Thank you, Joseph. On to you, Major.
Well, what can I say? I mean, we are talking about the same person and nearly the same attributes we know. So it would appear for me as a last person like a reputation. But I'll say what I feel I know about him. I think I saw him right from being appointed in the first Museveni cabinet. I saw him in the first Museveni. He was the Minister of Justice, Constitutional Affairs, he was Attorney General, and his contribution in cabinet was great. And I think he could still stand as one of the cabinet members who would say what he feels is right, not read the mind of the chair and talk what he thinks the chair wants. He would really say what he feels was good, and that was good. So he did that. about his brutal honesty, he was really brutally honest. There was a time when KIU, it was the chancellor, I think, of KIU.
Yes.
So our good old boy of Ontario School, Professor Kabwejere, said something which Kanye Ha had said earlier. Kanye Ha had earlier on said that Basaja Balaba should not be called Basaja Balaba because he works, he has put the university, should be called Basaja Akola, something to do with work, not just seeing. So Professor Kabojeri comes and says this thing. Kanye shut up and said that is intellectual dishonesty. you should quote me. You should quote me. Say Professor Kanyamba said this. That Kabojeri should not just come and talk as if it is his
idea. Yeah.
He said you quote me. Yes. Say Professor Kanyamba said Basaja Balaba should not be called Basaja Balaba, but and he said it in front of Kabojere. So it was that brutally honest. But the other aspect I wanted to say, like our friend said, is that I think it justifies a prophet is not known in his own home village. That's why with Jesus, when they said he was the son of God, people said, come on now, this son of Joseph, this one who helped his father carrying timber here, you're saying he's son of God. But when he went to other cities, they said he's truly son of God. So Kanyamba, if you went to Kenya, the Kenyan constitution as it stands now, they think it is one of the best constitutions. It is drafted by Kanyamba. And the Kenyan really know him as a hero. Talk about Kenya in the Kanyamba in the constitutional circles of Kenya. He drafted the Kenya, him and Sempewa.
Yeah.
But he did the drafting. Sempewa helped him.
Of course, with the Kenyan.
They're the brains of the Kenyan constitution. So you can imagine a prophet at home, you know him as an ordinary person. But when he walks across, and that's what happened with Jesus. So, so he did so much, and it's such a good. It is unfortunate that we're leaving that generation. We're losing them. Also, remember, Professor Bobby has just died, and that's the same generation. And Bobby is our good old boy of Ontario School. He has also died the same thing, at the same age. But they have lived, they have grown gracefully. They have aged, although Kanyama had some sickness at the end, but you can see that they aged gracefully without any alcoholic show on them or intoxication in them. They gracefully and lived. That is averagely any expected life expectancy. So for Professor Kanyamba, if there was a house called Uganda, and you have to check the wall, the construction, I think you could criticise, build from here to this is his part, the bricks he put. You can visibly quantify that this house called Uganda, I think Kanyamba built from that corner to this is his bricks. I hope all of us will live to be seen what additional bricks we put in this Uganda. I hope some of us will not instead steal the bricks and put it in the pocket.
Thank you.
I hope so too.
Thank you, Major, and thank you to all of you, of course, for those profound words about the legacy of the late Professor George Kanyamba. On to our topic for discussion now. Well, as you all know, Thursday marked a pivotal moment in Uganda's political calendar as the National Resistance Movement, the party that has steered the nation for nearly 4 decades, held its much anticipated primaries across all 72,000 villages. Well, this isn't just an internal party affair, it's a critical barometer for the health of Uganda's democracy and also a significant precursor to the upcoming general elections slated for January 2026. Well, this process itself, with its unique lining up system at the village level, aims to embody grassroots democracy. However, as you all know, the stakes are incredibly high. And as we've seen in past internal polls, Thursday's primaries were also fraught with past challenges. We had concerns ranging from allegations of voter irregularities and manipulation of registers, to reports of intimidation, violence, and the pervasive influence of money. The NRM Electoral Commission a day earlier had issued strict guidelines, but the real test has been in the implementation on the ground. As we dissect Thursday's events, our discussion today centers on the compelling question: the NRM primaries, who wins, who loses, and what it means for Uganda. But beyond simply identifying the successful candidates, we shall also consider the ripple effects of these outcomes. But just very quickly, I think I should start with you, Major, since you are the NRM voice. Well, two of you, you and then George. The system of lining up, you know, as opposed to the secret ballot, how effectively does it guarantee the integrity and secrecy of individual votes? And what are the potential implications of, for example, things like voter intimidation and so on?
Well, the lining up is a constitutional matter. It's not just by mere guidelines. It is in the party constitution. Because the party felt at the time of the constitutional making of the drafting the constitution, the constitution was made and it formed part of the documents which was used for registration of the organization. So it was very at the start about lining up. Now the feeling was that this is an in-house election. This is a party election. We are all brothers and sisters. We're just saying among these 3 or 4, 5 brothers, who should we give the flag? And therefore, the parties felt that the constitution making process, the brain, the wisdom in the constitution was that since it is a family thing, a party thing, let us do it openly, transparently, so that we avoid manipulation through secret ballot. Because secret ballot also has its challenges. Up to now, we are still fidgeting with it in the national level, whether to use a computer or whether it is a come and drop, all that is still a challenge. So the party thought that being an in-house thing, open lining would be good. And that would therefore say, why do you think it will bring hatred? We are all in-house. We are all party members. We observe the same rule. Let's do it. So that is how it stands. And like all pieces of legislation, we are yet to find out the test. To me, it's now not on about the secrecy or what, but it is about the operationalization. Because you find a line, some people just move from one line to another in a very chaotic way. You need strong policing to control that people. Sometimes some others are pulling others from the line directly. You come to this one. So the discipline in the line, you need to have the policing capacity to do it. But if we took it the spirit that is an in-house thing, it would work.
Okay, thank you. So George, over to you. I'm not asking about the lining up. I think Major has adequately talked about it. We all know that the contest has been intense within the party, as we've seen across the country, the videos, the news and everything. But then does this intense competition within the party, the NRM primaries, does it, what is your reading? Does it suggest healthy internal democracy, or do you think this points to other underlying issues? For example, would it mean that people are running there because they lack other viable alternatives?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that I don't think the intensity would have been there if people didn't love the party. I think that people have made their choices because there are so many parties being registered. There are those that existed, there are even those that are being registered as of last week. We're even seeing other people muting the idea of registering political parties. So the people themselves, I think from the menu that they have chosen to say, let's identify with the National Resistance Movement. And you have seen over the years that the National Resistance Movement has been the most dominant, even in the, whether it's local elections, whether it's parliamentary elections, the NRM has been winning. People usually want to identify with the winning party, whether or not they understand how it works, by the way. But people always like to identify with the winning political party. So the NRM is a beneficiary of those who would wish to identify with the winning party, and that's why you see the intensity. But it could also be that we have not, as a country, provided viable alternatives. That the growth of alternative political organizations has been stunted. So we do not see political organizations with the infrastructure, you know, that the NRM has. For example, having structures permeating up to the grassroots and being able to mobilize the grassroots support, being able to articulate alternative policy positions in a way that is very compelling, providing a strategic vision, you know, that that motivates the grassroots people, you know, to identify with them. In fact, last week we were here having a conversation, I think, about political organizations, and I remember Dr. Sarah saying the opposition also needs to come out with a strategic position on how to compete for power and give people the hope that they can win an election. But as long as these political organizations do not inspire that kind of hope in the public, then people would rather contest within, identify with the national resistance movement and the challenge from within. So the intensity of these campaigns is a mixed bag. It's of those who feel genuinely that they are members of the national resistance movement, but also those who have seen that there are no other alternatives and they would rather come and be part of the national resistance movement. Whichever the case, the net beneficiary is the national resistance movement.
Thank you. Sarah, as Thursday's primaries were playing off from morning to late afternoon, I think we were all following what was happening in the different parts of the country. But what stood out for you the most in all the scenarios, all the news that was coming in and so on?
No, before I come to that, I want to briefly share my 2 cents on whether the vigilance we see in NRM primaries means genuine support for the party. And I will quote, without mentioning specific names, one NRM director, a colleague of Afande Awich, Pollar, one day from a talk show at a different media house, then he tells me, you know, we agree on most of the things, but I think I can't manage life in opposition. Meaning that it's convenience, even at that high level, top notch, full director of NRM at NRM Secretariat. Then if you look at the voters, and I will quote one of our panelists on another show, also name not mentioned. So I asked him, if you were to join elective politics today, what party would you join? He said, no, if we had spoiled, I would also go and join the spoilers. I will run on NRM. So these are top notch, because the other one is a professor, this is a director, NRM Secretariat. These are their views. How about the grassroots person? Recently, we are discussing why these old people have failed to retire. And the majority, if not all of them, are from NRM. And we said, you know, majority Ugandans are one check away from poverty, the economic conditions. Again, I had a conversation with one of the historicals. He just passed on during COVID. May he rest in peace. And also, unusual of me, but for this show, allow me to withhold names. And I asked him why he was bouncing back into elections, because he had been defeated at one point. He said, you see this NRM of ours, if you are not seen in action, you are forgotten. Even if you fall sick, you can't, nobody will pick your calls. Even if you do what. So the reason we see these wheelchair leaders, because the East African MP, there's another wheelchair minister in East African community, a ministry that needs really vibrance and energy if we had to follow the space of EALA and the need for integration. But you have a wheelchair leader, you go to now Ajumani, long line, I don't know whether we qualify the first prime minister, the wheelchair is beyond wheelchair. Woo. And and he might again be appointed first deputy prime minister, and you wonder, lead of government business, you are beyond wheelchair. Yours is not maybe bed chair, bed, I don't know what to call it. Is bed weird. So, what kind of country? And if you had quote the words of Mo Ibrahim, when he said that when you look at majority leaders in government in Africa, they can only lead Africans to the grave. So you have this fear of, meaning we have not yet concluded the safeguards for social protection. Even at highest political level, you have people getting worried of being forgotten, or falling sick and maybe failing to get clearance to go abroad because our hospitals are almost non-functional. So you find that they can only take care of themselves and their families by making sure they are in leadership, regardless of whether they are wheeled on a bed or a chair or a wheelbarrow. They must be there. So that for us, for me, is the biggest indictment of how the social protection of this country is worrying. It's like everybody, whereas us we can fall into poverty beyond, after one missing one paycheck. You find that our top leadership, maybe they cannot go a year. If you remember, and this one I'll just mention, the late Ria Kategaya when he had left government. And then he ran out of money for fuel. And many of them are still worried about the basics. So when NRM is telling people that they've developed the country, what kind of country have they developed that cannot even secure people that have led this country to the top leadership? And they have to secure themselves by dying into power. We can leave their chairman alone. I hope he's also not in that category. So when I go back to the question of what have we witnessed, cases of bribery, including open, broad bribery of people in lines. I think in 3 instances, these videos have been shared on social media. I don't know how many, much more has not been shared. Cases of violence that started on the eve of the election, gunshots everywhere, and you wonder what guns are doing at polling stations. In a party primary, which should be a brotherly, sisterly fight. Guns everywhere, shootings. We saw the heated exchange of, really that was, I don't know how to call it, lacked all forms of decorum between the culprits in Remiaga. You look at, incidences here and there, and the MP who is shot at Mengo Hospital, is in Mengo Hospital fighting for his life. Internal primary elections. If there is this level of desperation in a family fight, what kind of violence are the NRM contenders going to bring to the national spectrum during general elections? Because it's like it's a do or die for them. There have been excuses that the violence is caused by opposition, and if we had tossed back the same question, so now who is causing violence in NRM primaries? They are the masterminds of violence. They control the tools of violence. They unleash violence in brotherly, sisterly fights. So then what violence will they unleash with the other competitors from other political parties? For me, it's a total embarrassment. As a pro-democracy activist, it's really, it shows us how for every 2 steps, maybe we make 3 steps backwards. It's very unfortunate.
Thank you. Robert, let me come to you. Before we started this conversation, I know we were musing about the turn-up in Adjumani, especially for the long queues, the people lining up to show their support for General Moses Ali. And you made quite a funny comment, which I don't want to repeat here. But beyond...
That is free to repeat.
No.
Beyond simply turning up in big numbers, what defines quality voter participation? And are people really turning up to express genuine support, or do you think there are actually other factors at play? Just looking at that example.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judith. But before I delve in that, today we are going to use Professor Kanye Ha in most of the demonstrations we are going to discuss here. There is this little girl the man adopted as a daughter who has been looking after him. I think we need to give a lot of kudos to that young lady. You know, managing Professor Kanye Ha is a very difficult thing. For example, he was not supposed to drink soda, but the man would say, give me soda. They say the soda too much. One, they did not say one. You bring one. And she would give. I don't know. Then the driver. There have been courageous people to keep this old man. Elections in Africa generally are a disappointment. And if there was any other option, as Mr. Ochieno normally says, would have opted for that option and left elections alone. Of course, when you look at elections in different countries, in Congo, in Rwanda, in so many places, it is depressing. You wonder why even now we use them. In Kenya, in Tanzania, terrible stuff. But of course in Uganda, there have been, it is degenerating. Last elections, in the primaries, there were a few issues here and there. In these elections, it looked like it was the order of the day. If you were watching TV and you saw what was happening in Isingiro, you would think it is Gaza. Cars are burning, motorcycles are burning, and you wonder, why are people burning cars? Shootouts in Mbale, in Bududa. A man came to a rally and somebody argued with him and he just picked a panga and cut off his ear.
The ear?
Yes, barbarism. This is barbaric people. Then something that I've been arguing about on a daily basis, militarization of politics. The unfortunate thing that happened to this country, when I was growing up, you would know that this is a policeman, this is a soldier, this is a local administrative, I don't know, Judith, whether you saw local administration office, police. They used to call them Ogwangweno.
Ogwangweno means
Ogwangweno is this thing which eats chicken.
Wild cat.
Wild cat. Then you would know. The only person you would not know was an intelligent officer. You would not know intelligence officers. It was very, very difficult to know them unless you are very close in those circles. These days, intelligence officers announce themselves in the bar and they say, I work with the intelligence office. And if you are still arguing, he pulls out a pistol and he puts
You call them beggars.
they are not intelligent.
They put the thing on the gun on the table. And you just say, sorry.
You look at it.
Now, these days, it is very difficult to know whether somebody is a police officer or an army man or Gwangweno or intelligence officer. You can't know. A man comes and a little argument, he goes back to his car and he comes with a gun. Yesterday, I was watching football at Kyambongo and a taxi came. It was a match between police officers. A taxi with the labels of a taxi. And what was it? It was a military thing, but disguised as a taxi. When they opened inside, the seats were arranged, some looking this way, some looking that way. So it looked like these things I read in the papers where they torture people in the vehicles, but with the labels of a taxi.
Blue, white.
So these guys are the ones who have made elections very, very bad.
Gwangwen, it's what?
Because they go to the polling station, they are not candidates, they are not voters in that place. They have just gone there for a mission, either to shoot somebody, to pick somebody, to disappear with somebody. And that has characterized the NRM primaries. I did make a comment when these elections were beginning that these elections were going to be violent. And somebody told me, no, they are not going to be violent because they have put very strict rules at NRM. And I said, rules against who? Rules work only, in this country, only one person. So, going back to your question now, when you look at these elections, number one, as I've always argued, people are not vying to lead, they are vying to eat. And therefore it is a contention for eating, and the Africans, especially from this hemisphere, when it comes to eating, they become barbaric. So you find, and my colleague from the East African community, the Honorable, normally says that people are yearning for ideology. And I don't know which ideology.
Of food.
Ideology of food? What ideology are you talking about? So you see people struggling for the next meal card, to get the meal card, to go and get some food, and therefore it is a life and death. Because leadership shouldn't be a life and death thing. There must be something they are struggling for. Two, you are saying that they are popular because the others are bad loaf. They don't have ideology. No. This is a well-fed man or well-fed giant fighting with malnourished children. The other party is, so you want Munyagwazi party, this one of eating rice, to compete with the NRM at the same level, or these other parties that we have been talking about, when, for instance, parties are not allowed officially in this country, and the president announces, and the police officers announce, everybody announces. They announce that we don't want this party moving around, noop, what, and they will not move.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break, and we're glad that you're still with us here on the Citizens Chat Show. We are continuing with our discussion on the NRM primaries. Who wins, who loses, and what it means for Uganda. I'll now give the microphone to you, Major, because I think you have some issues that you'd like to respond. So I'd like you to respond first, and then I'll give you another question, if you could.
Maybe give me a question.
No problem. So does the turn-up that we see reflect the will of Ugandans? And also, when you see all this violence and irregularities that Sarah and your colleagues have highlighted, do you think this is a precursor for what's to come in January 2026?
Okay, thank you so much. I will also hope at some point that a question will come about, because we have put it as a topic, but we have not hinted on it, who actually loses and who wins. I think it is good for us to also dissect that, not to do it in passing. But apart from that, I have only two things to comment about what my friends have said. The Congressman always keeps emphasizing the fact that power was taken by force by
Yes.
NRM.
Yes.
Indeed, power was taken by force by legal notice number 1 of 1986, which gave power, the power of the state to President Museveni. And it was deliberate because that was a revolutionary struggle. That is how a revolution works. You take a power by popular force. Yes, that was done, and you don't need to plead guilty. Instead, we should be celebrated for that. For a revolutionary takeover by legal notice number 1 of 1986, which removed the reign of power and handed over to Museveni. Now, the important thing to note is that there was a promise that power would be given back to people, and this was done constitutionally by putting Article 1, power belongs to the people. So it wasn't taken and kept. It was taken for a purpose, because of a stage in the revolutionary struggle, but hand over power to the people. And it has been properly handed over, and that is why we are seeing series of elections, and that is why even us in NRM, we are always on tension, because we know if we don't perform, the power of the people will affect us. So, sir, the government was taken by force. It was a revolutionary struggle, but it was handed over back to the people, and the people now have it. The other thing I wanted to say is that are people joining NRM because of desperation? I think that is the question you asked. I don't think so. Only that people seem to interpret the interest that people find in NRM, and it is not conducive to them. You see, a political party must meet the interest of the people. And there are some interests which are material, others are not material. For example, there are some people who are innovators who do their own thing. All they want is the spiritual interest. In a sense, say security, in a sense of conducive atmosphere to do their things, or others in the sense of democracy. Those are spiritual interests that you don't meet in material terms. So, if somebody is joining NRM because he can sleep at night, hasn't he joined because it meets his interest? If somebody can join because there are opportunities in terms of jobs and employment, isn't that a material interest? It is only bad if people were joining NRM for interest which is illegal. Like you say, you never can enter, you should not enter into a contract of illegality. If people were joining because NRM can make them kill or can make them make others slaves, that would be illegitimate interest. But whether somebody has joined because he knows he can be appointed an RDC, or he knows he can get employment by opportunity jobs created, or he knows he has joined because he sleeps at nights, those are interests. Now, particular interest that has been done is by a framing of a manifesto. And once this manifesto is framed, it puts in so much intervention that meets interest of the people, these various interests. Many interventions, including PDM, Etandikwa, this other one which takes considers body is called what? Yoga, women funds, youth funds.
But these are government
whatever
programs, and not
Yes.
NRM programs.
So, it is captured in our manifesto. It becomes operational at a government level because we put it in a manifesto, and it is that manifesto that we market the people, and the people vote, the people sign a social contract. When we form a government, we put this manifesto to government for implementation. It is not given to government by God. It is not God which gives it.
Just on the very same programs. You know, we have been seeing the president on his tours with the people wearing yellow everywhere. Yes, you propose as a ruling party. Then when the program is being implemented, it's everybody's program. Are you then saying that people have to join NRM to benefit from Uganda PDM?
No. What I'm saying, because NRM puts such program in their manifesto, it makes people feel like it's a party that meets our interest. They address our interest. Because which party had PDM in their manifesto? Zero. I didn't see any. Maybe if they had PDM in their manifesto, they would have won the election. So we put it there, and it is given to government. So therefore, I want to plead guilty if the charge is people are joining NRM for interest.
I would plead guilty. And it is our commitment that we meet as many interests as possible, but legitimate interest. And it ranges from material interest to spiritual interest. And I've already demonstrated examples of spiritual interest, which includes things like sleeping at night, things like security, things like democracy, general happiness. So I plead guilty for anybody saying that people join NRM to meet their interests. We want to meet as much interest as we could, so that we could as well have 100% of people joining, because we meet their interest. So that is why it's joining, and that is why now we develop challenges in internal democracy, because we have met so much interest and so many people have come that we now have to struggle around on how to meet internal democracy by taking flag bearers.
So for those of us who are not in NRM, we can't sleep at night.
No, do I get?
No,
I'm saying, Sarah, I'm saying if there was insecurity indeed, and people were not sleeping, or even if you take it cattle rustling, when Karamojong were rustling, and Choli Lao and Tessa, people in IDP camp, not because of Lakwena, or not because of coin, but there was IDP because of cattle rustling.
No.
We are the one who ran. I don't know. You are in Tororo. You don't bother Karamoja. For example, Sarah, if he's doubting, from Otuke, people would run from Otuke to Lera district, or Leptong like Apala. At one time, the people down south would tell us who are running from Karamojong, that why are you running? Do Karamojong have horns? And they would say, you people fear to dig. You are running from famine. It is you who are. Now, when they reached Leptong, because they didn't know, incidentally, that is his district. These people who are telling us from the east that we are running from famine, they climbed the trees to look at this Karamojong if they have horns. Karamojong killed 80 in one day because it happened to have been a market day. So all of us kept moving from the border of Karamojong up to Lira town. This one is saying there was no displacement.
No, I'm not,
so therefore, I'm saying, in case of, because Sarah seemed not to see the clarity of sleeping, I'm saying, in the case of cattle rustling, if it is removed and you sleep, that is a spiritual interest met. In the case of Lord's Resistance Army, if there's no more coin and people are sleeping, that is it. The case of Luer during UNLA or even other areas, people are now sleeping. I don't know why you're saying because I don't support and then I don't sleep. I am saying in places where insecurity had caused lack of sleep and people are sleeping, then they get their spiritual interest.
Okay.
Yes.
Just a quick one. No, my objection was the idea that concentration camps in northern Uganda was because of Karamojong, and that's a new concept. If Karamojong was a factor, is amongst the factors. The primary reason for concentration camps, and they were terrible camps, in northern Uganda, was because of NRA, which started war in northern Uganda. War is started, the coins came in. So it was about war.
These were different periods. For example, cattle rustling that we are talking about, from 79 and 80. Do you know, during 79, 80, and during Obote's regime, cattle rustling was there.
What is
dead. But despite that militia, the raiding continued. So the cattle rustling IDP I'm talking of is even came before coin.
But
it
IDP
came
in
before
northern
coin.
Uganda primarily was because of this NRA.
You didn't know this
so,
one.
Okay.
No, of course I did.
Okay, so
and then quickly, the Luweru thing was not about UNLA. The Luweru thing was because NRA was there. Because these are concepts that we need to cleanse,
So, Judge, I want to come to you again still. This is because you're both members of the ruling party. And I think one of the contestations that we've seen that have shaped the primaries, the campaigns that have led us to the primaries is one thing. The original members of the NRM, and then you're having these people who are defecting from other parties and also vying for the party flag. I'd just like to, what does this mean for the party cohesion? What does it mean for the party unity going forward?
Well, certainly there is need for managing a transition, particularly for those who have not been in the NRM and are defecting from one political organization as the other. to the NRM. But it shouldn't be seen as an exception, because every political party is trying to win over as many supporters as possible. In fact, it's even much better if it wins over leaders from another political organization. The issue of managing their transition is something that the party has got to deal with, because I have seen those sentiments. In fact, I have even seen them playing out in these particular primaries in some of the constituencies that I have had the opportunity to visit, where there are those who are perceived to have been newcomers into the party and are running for the party flag. And there are those who are saying, well, you haven't yet, been inducted into the party, but already you want to take up the position. But I think that is for the voters to decide. But I think largely, as a political party, it's a challenge that we need to find the best way to deal with in two ways. One, in terms of our party constitution, usually the legislation arises from experience. So perhaps what has happened now will trigger the party to have a conversation about how do we manage those who are coming from other political organizations. That transition, it has to be well articulated within the party. For now, anyone who comes from any political organization and joins the NRM is treated the same way as any other member of the party. In fact, we celebrate the coming in of new members into the party. Those challenges is work in progress. I think this is something that the party can deal with after these particular elections.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sarah, on Thursday, I think what we saw in Kampala in some polling stations, like Bat Valley, I think what you were sharing earlier, we saw some polling stations that didn't really have people coming to vote. And also some of the leaders in Kampala were talking about the same, decrying the low voter turnup in some areas. And we also know that Kampala is an opposition stronghold, especially NUP to be precise. What is your interpretation of the turnout that you saw on Thursday politically, and what do you foresee as we count down to the coming elections?
One is that capital cities usually are always strongholds of opposition. It's not a Ugandan peculiar thing. Even when NRM was very popular in the first elections, that's when they would be defeated by the likes of Seven Kizito and others. So Kampala has always been opposition. It's not just that it's NUP. Currently, NUP could be the dominant party, but Kampala is always opposition. Previously, good candidates have managed to win a few seats in Kampala. You could talk of the days of Captain Francis Babu, Honorable Margaret Zua, and Fred Ruhindi. But with the time, I think the quality also dropped from NRM, because again, when you look at the caliber, as much as you could say Margaret Zua is not there, it's still there, still. The vibrance, it can't be the same, especially with the young. Uganda is the second youngest country where majority of voters are youth. So appealing to such I don't even know how Moses Ali does it. You have extreme aged, and it's not that we have anything personal against him. He's a public figure, and we must discuss, because he was a minister before he was born. So you can imagine. And
you guys did things, man.
yeah. So the appealing to this younger generation could be difficult in some areas, but very low turnout. But still, we have to first underscore the fact that still NRM supporters are really very few in Kampala. So, but even those fewer people did not turn out. I don't think even the NRM register, for that matter, for Kampala is genuine. Because usually we saw like in Kawempe where they were saying NRM supporters are 200. At times they announce figures which are even more than Electoral Commission. Yet we know they don't have support. So if they are using the register, they use it in Kawempe, where the Electoral Commission said we have 221, and then NRM says we have 200. And yet, you know, the people, 80% are noob. So you wonder which register sometimes they use. And if you have 200 and your candidate has 8,000, even after adding the dead and whatever is 9,000.
Can I give you information?
Yes, yes, please.
With the register,
I
as
will
I
take
told
your
you,
information.
is a survival thing. So sometimes people go and register in that NRM thing for survival. Because when PDM and these other things that he was coming about, they are mapped among their supporters.
They are
Tomorrow the president, on Saturday, tomorrow is Saturday, the president is coming to Kyambongo University. He's not coming to see which machine or what has been discovered. He's coming to see an NRM chairman who has established a chicken poultry farm of about 50 or 70 birds. Now they are carrying chicken from all over the farms and bringing it to Kyambongo to show the president that those are chicken for this poor man. And I don't know whether NRM does not have intelligence. Just go to Kyambongo now, they are cleaning, they are building the places, they are bringing chicken. But this man had about 20 to 40 birds.
But they know. They know that they're doing fake things.
George.
I will take from George.
By the way, for the record, it is not true that the president is or PDM is only targeting those that are registered in the NRM register. That is not true.
Which Noob Stewart has been shown anywhere that is a PDM.
So why is
that's I do not know.
Apart from PDM, other initiatives are they not mapped out to actually benefit?
No, it is not. It's not.
So the president is only listing NRM supporters.
And the president, no, and the president is very clear about this. In fact, if you're discovered to have done it that way, okay, if you're discovered to have done it that way, you face disciplinary action.
That is on paper.
You get it?
So,
but anyway, but that was not the point. I wanted to respond to the issue of registration.
Yes.
Where
Kawempe, you had 200.
Dr. Sarah says that in Kawempe you find NRM has registered 200 and then the Electoral Commission has registered 220 and 21.
Yes.
You see, when the NRM is doing its registration, it calls out for the public, those who support NRM, to come and register. You could find that I have registered in the NRM register, but I'm not registered in the National Electoral Commission register. It is very possible, you know. And for us, we want to attract as many people as possible within the party.
Including fake supporters.
Okay? No, they may not be. There could be those who are 16 now, and by five years from now, they will be 21 years and they will be voters. You know, so for us, our register is for those who support the national resistance movement, and we encourage them to. We encourage them to go and do the registration with the national registration with the Electoral Commission. If they don't, does not stop them from being members of the national resistance movement. So we cannot compare the two registers, and they actually serve two different purposes.
You know, this is very good information because Honorable George, you know, there's a time we are discussing the fraud. The Constitution and other laws, for one to make a decision to join a political party, you must be of 18 and above.
Yes.
So for NRM, for you, you make that decision at 16.
No. What I'm telling you is that we have registers where there are people who have registered as members of the National Resistance
Including
Movement,
At
16.
but
16.
have
How
not.
old are they?
16.
How
I'm
old are
not-
the youngest members of your
At
party?
16.
They're within the voting age, which is
No.
from 18.
No, you are changing. Let's be honest.
Okay, let me
No,
continue with my
if I mention
Just
if
let
I
you
men- if I
finish.
mention
Let you
16,
finish, and then we
I am
come
now
back.
making the clarification
No,
that
but
they are
it
within
was
the voting
public.
within the voting age. Okay,
Specifically, 18.
18
was,
and above. Okay, whatever. I'm just making the clarification that we register as many people as possible. Okay, we do not make it a point that you must be registered with the national
Thank you very
with the
much,
electoral
George.
commission register. No, we register you as a member of the National Resistance Movement.
Thank you very much, George, and you've made my submission much easier. For viewers out there, a person of 16 years, below 18 years, you are not allowed to join any political party. You are not allowed to make a decision, especially an important decision, to join, to choose
Which provision is
which
this?
party to belong. I will give you the details. We did this show.
provision?
We talked
That's
about
We
this.
did
Yes,
this
we
show
talked about
and
this.
shared all the
That's correct,
details.
yes.
I will share with you in the break since it's not time and we debated this. So when you go to like Bat Valley, you have the NRM officials there, materials. By 3 o'clock, nobody has shown up to vote. The people are saying, oh, let's just wait a few more. And the guidelines from Dr. Tango Doi, the
2
chair,
p.m.
were very clear. I think people should have appeared at 10:30.
Between 10 to 2 p.m.
Yeah,
close.
and close. So for you there, nobody has come, so I don't know whether they are going to be honest enough and say, here, 0 turnout. So, but NRM really in the polling stations, I saw the comments of Salim Uhuru, I think he's the chair of NRM Central Division, saying the voter turnout was shockingly low, and I think he was being genuine. And you wonder, this is the most informed constituents of the NRM, so you cannot say that people didn't follow. This is a capital city. So if there are information gaps in the capital city, it shows something fundamentally wrong. Maybe Dr. Jambo could have a point, registering with NRM for convenience. As I conclude, in 2006, after the return of multi-party politics, so I went to my rural constituency. I found my mother had all materials of all political parties. Just a
How?
minute.
How?
I'm going to make evidence for Dr. Jambo. So I asked her, what is this? She said, no. You see, these people, they might come here asking for their things, whether you belong to them or not, and then they start violence. So me, whoever brings their things, I collect. If violence breaks out, and they say, you, where are you? If I see the NRM, I'll give them NRM. If they are DP, I will show them their things. If they are UPC, I will show them their things. She had collected everything. So I said, what's wrong with my mother? Because she's not illiterate. I worried. I said, I must find out what is happening with other homesteads. She's a counselor at LC2 level. So it's not that she did that out of ignorance. So, no, but you see the issue of convenience.
It is
So people are not in NRM. They could be there saying, you know these people. We see them how they beat others on TV. Let me have their material. When they come, I saw during the fall of Obote, we had an uncle who was a UPC diehard in the house. So when they said the car had caught fire at the technical school, which is near our home, he looked for where to dump UPC materials. And then he said, I will find a big stone, tie all these materials of UPC and throw in the well. What if these people come checking? So this lack of civic education for the people, and then the threats. If you see what is happening now in Rwashande versus Sechkubo in Remiyaga, you might find Sechkubo supporters are rushing to pick Rwashande's t-shirts so that soldiers don't come to beat them. You never know what angle the violence might take. So it's not out of free choice that people are everywhere crowding NRM.
Thank you. To the question of who wins and who loses, of course, as we have this conversation right now, we don't have an idea. We can see preliminary results coming through, but we cannot concretely say who is winning and who is. Hopefully, by the time this show broadcasts, some figures would have come up and other confirmations would have come through. But generally, and I'm throwing this to all of you, your predictions of in the different, just randomly, where you think things could actually maybe work in favor of a particular person or the other. If you just, Robert, rather, if you just have any random thoughts, but also the broader question of beyond the individuals who win, these primaries, who will be the biggest winner or winners and who will be the biggest losers, and how ultimately does this shape the road to 2026?
Thank you, Judith. I don't want to talk about an individual. I want to keep it on Uganda. Quantitatively, NRM is going to win, but Uganda is going to lose. Why? We have agreed on this show that the best form of governance is a democratic governance. And in democracy, as Sarah has been explaining here, there are some parameters, characteristics, or features that must appear for you to sit home and say, oh, cometh democracy and cometh hope. In this case, the way you see these elections, in my view, they don't give you a lot of hope for a country that is growing democratically. In fact, the young people, when you listen to them, and for us we work amidst young people of age who are voters and who are beginning to understand things. Some of them are the most educated of their village. And when you propose something election, you find the whole class uncomfortable. Very, very uncomfortable. And you ask them, why are they uncomfortable? And they tell you, but those NRM things. So you say, what's wrong with NRM's things? Bribery, and I think you have seen. Those who are watching TV, you see. Violence, showing power, showing this chest thumping that I normally see here, how they are defeating opposition. Instead of honest people mobilizing, debating to their candidates, you have had these rallies. If you listen to a rally from Isingiro to Kapelebiong to wherever in these villages of Uganda, and you try to filter out what Honorable Odongo was talking about, what is the ideology of this candidate? They are just saying, send me, so there is Luganda word they are now using. Muntu mengende mbasakire.
Translate.
It's like, send me so that I can go and collect food for you. That's what they say. You see, send me. Instead of teaching people, they say we are going to struggle in parliament so that we build institutions. Institutions that can help to build infrastructure. He says, send me so that I can go and ask for a road. They don't ask for roads. Roads are planned for. So you see there is no hope there for Uganda. Even if who wins, Moses Ali or Kadaga or these other people. In fact, Uganda is going to turn like Cameroon. You know, Cameroon, the last general elections, the people voted when their president was in the hospital in France, Paul Biya. And they were there ticking, a man who is dying instead of praying for him. And they got an embarrassment when they hosted the African Cup of Nations. The president would not even lift a cup. They have to carry it for him. He was shaking. And then people asking, this is the man steering this country. And go and check statistics of Cameroon right now. is one of the poorest African country, being run very badly. I went there, people still eat things which were eaten during Stone Age. You find people selling in the market things you don't imagine that human beings are eating.
Thank you.
So for me, NRM is going to win because they are the ones in the election. Of course, maybe it would give also a chance to the opposition when it comes to January. Because if NRM is bringing some of the candidates that I've seen on TV, then the opposition have a right to bring us a better person. So the opposition should just look at these guys they voted on Thursday and bring a better person. For example, if the other one is coming on the stretcher, you bring the one who is coming standing and running upright. And we see whether the people will still vote the one on the stretcher. And we see them. So when you look at these candidates, of course, money has been the issue. The one with money can mobilize people, can transport them and bring. For me, I still believe as I end that I don't believe in these two types of elections. Lining up in 2025 is like telling us to go back and play football bare feet like they did in 1959 or 56. Number two, colleges. Colleges can only work where people are very, very literate. They know what they are doing. They know the procedures. So college elections in Uganda, where we are voting youth and interested people through colleges, a sham. This lining up, a big sham.
Thank you. Dr. Ojiambo says, who wins NRM? Who loses Uganda? What do you say?
Yes, before I answer that question, I wanted to, supplement what he's saying, that in Cameroon, the president only lives in France and only visits the country for swearing in.
Yeah, true. It's true. It's very, very true.
Africa, really, I think, of course, I saw a few presidents disagreed with Trump when he called Africa, some of the countries, I think majority really shithole. Our president, I think, was honest that time, and he said, yes, I agree with Trump. And I remember members of the diplomatic community was shocked, saying, how can a leader of a country say he agrees that his country is a shithole? So he knows that he's not there to improve or whatever, improve the country. I know the slogans that come in at elections. I know basically university students had crafted a nice name, which I thought was befitting for the NRM. They call it Mugat Party, the party for bread. So I think really it's a party for bread. The scramble for positions in NRM is to say, like the late Katorbuama was honest, let him also go and eat. And the people normally, the village, I remember one time I was at church, and a very honest man, a family friend, came and said, Sarah, this is your vehicle. He said, it's okay. You also have something to eat. So you leave these politics. So that thing of saying, for you are here talking of quality of democracy, civic space indicators, building institutions. Those are your things. The people there are saying, this one you have eaten also bring for us. This one ate alone, he didn't bring. So those are the arguments. This one we sent you for 5 years, you ate alone, you didn't bring. This one was bringing, but brought little. This one, the other time I called you, you didn't pick my call, you don't eat with us. Those are the arguments during campaigns. Nobody, and that's why NRM is very comfortable. Because the citizenry is just discussing bread and how that bread is shared. They have made the issue of saying politics is distribution of resources. They've made it, the literal meaning. They've taken that statement in their hands. So what is my share? That's why there is increasing voter bribery. That's why we saw people in NRM primaries shamelessly distributing money in the lines in a view of observers. I don't know why they were not even disqualified those candidates. Then you see the violence. It's a matter of, somebody stepping in my bread. Who is the winner? NRM, because that's what they stand for. It's a Mugat party, bread. The loser is democracy. The loser are Ugandans. We are the losers.
Thank you. Judge,
Good.
are you the winners and are Ugandans the losers?
I think we were here a couple of weeks ago and we were discussing elections. And actually we were discussing longevity. And I did observe that the question of longevity would not arise had we dealt with the quality of our elections, the quality of our democracy, because it's the one that gives birth to leaders, whether you like them or you don't like them. So what we are witnessing today, in my view, is people expressing themselves, by the way, in a balance of probabilities. Those who are participating in the NRM primaries out of opportunistic reasons today, even if we take the conspiracy theory of both Sarah and Dr. Ojiambo, that they could be there because, they want Mugati. They could be there, in the yeah, because they have no viable alternative and so on and so forth. In the balance of probabilities, the opportunists, I don't discount the fact that they do exist. But that should not explain the enthusiasm in the elections within NRM. That cannot, because that could be like 10%. Okay, let's assume that they are there. Then it means that they are participating in the process, and therefore the outcome of that process is influenced by their participation. And therefore we should then, all of us,
inclusive,
that means all of us should then embrace it and say, at least all of us participated, even as we wanted bread inside there, we are there, and therefore the outcome represents the best interest. You get it? So really for me, I don't want to go into that kind of that debate. My debate is basically to say, for this country to be a winner, all of us have got to be interested. And the lenses should not be focused only on the NRM elections. It should also focus on the other players. In fact, I'm waiting for one day here in this program when we are going to say, let's debate the political opposition in Uganda. Usually it is overtaken, it's in the shadows of NRM. Whenever we come here to discuss the political landscape in Uganda, we end up debating NRM and we forget debating. Just hold on.
Moderator should take the challenge so that
You
next
get it?
Thursday.
So that we also focus on the quality of the political organizations we have, in spite of the challenges that they are facing. Because many times they have gone below the radar, because each time we begin this conversation, they say, oh, NRM. So, and I'm happy because we are debating NRM, and I think we seem to be, to have accepted that we have no option, but NRM will have to provide leadership.
One party state.
You get it? So for me, the winner in this whole thing is Ugandans, because now they have the opportunity, okay, to assess the performance of the party, okay, assess the level of organization within this national resistance movement, to look at the levels of preparation, and also use it to prepare for the incoming elections. This has been like a what? How do you call it? You could call it like a dry run for the next elections, because this election has has actually gripped the country, 90% of the country. If you went in the streets of Kampala, in spite of the fact that there is no participation in some of the polling stations you're talking about, but the whole country is glued on TV, on social media to find out what is the outcome of these elections.
Because people are dying.
So the thing is,
They could
is
be
that
counting that dead.
you cannot discount the NRM, okay, in our public space. It's part and parcel of the business that we do on a daily, and therefore we must be interested.
And then who loses, though? Who is the loser in this case? You say the win is for Ugandans, and who is the loss for?
Why would we think of losses?
So in this case, you only see a win-win situation.
Even where there have been, mistakes, there have been violence, they should serve as a good example. They should serve as an example, a bad example, for us to avoid in the future. They say there is no bad person. At worst, they can serve as a bad example. So where the elections have not been conducted in a free and fair environment, we should use that to avoid the same mistake when we go for the national election. So for me, Ugandans are the net winners in this exercise. There should be no loser. After these elections, we should go back to the drawing board and map out the country and see where were the trigger points, what was the motivation, where were the gaps, where was the security, who are the drivers of this violence. Now, can we fix going into the national elections come January?
Thank you. Joseph.
NRA, of course, wins, but it's a national tragedy for the country. Look, NRA went to the bush. It's a national tragedy. NRA went to the bush in 1981. By then, Amin had ruled this country militarily for 9 years. He wrought havoc in this country, but he didn't claim to play politics or democracy or anything else, nor did he play with our money into the situations. UPC had governed this country for only 8 years. Museveni came in 1980-81, complaining of how power had not only been dominated and controlled by these people who don't want to leave power. That's 1980, during the campaigns, Museveni was talking about it. Yeah? I mean, 9 years, Obote, democratically, 8 years, delivering everything, including taking Museveni to school. Okay? Election comes, or rather 1981 comes, Museveni goes to the bush, allegedly to correct this. 1980 general elections, I was of age, certainly older than some of the people who are now registering for under NRM with the basic conversation with my brethren here. You know? If you count incidents of violence and irregularities across the country, you couldn't compare them with this extraordinary charade we're seeing, and these NRA people, including that picture that I'm watching there, some of the people dying in internal NRM primaries. So to the extent that Museveni subjected Luwero to a torturous war of massacre for 4.5 years, captures power, controls power, seeks to check his opponents, not through the ballot, but through the violence and criminality that we saw, including the massacres in Mukura and northern Uganda and eastern Uganda and all these, in the name of stability and alternative polity. Then we come today in 2025. What lessons do we learn? This is internally within NRA itself. So no, it's a sad experience. So meaning, I don't know whether there is any average young Ugandan who wants to learn through this. 4 days ago, I stopped over in a shop not far away from here. And the daughters of the owner of the shop, who attend school but had come home, one 17, another 15. Starting with the 17-year-old, told me that she wants to leave this country, and if she leaves this country, she's not going to come back. You know? And the reason is because of the experience she had at Mulago. She was trying to look for a birth certificate, and the mother had to go the second time and get a bribe. Then Nira, they had been turned round and round and round and round, and she told me that, look, you know, if they could get their way, they want us to ban people working over 40, because the nurses who are over 40. The older nurses, it was not about age in Mulago. Merely over 40, that's how I can see young girl. You know, we're extremely rude. And to credit to you, fantastic young people, this girl, she may have her own prejudice. She said, the young nurses in Mulago, this is the second time I'm saying in the program, were very, very kind, including when a particular big nurse, she used to use the word, said she was going for lunch. This girl said Bambi and actually supported them, these young girls. That is the experience of Uganda that we have today. Now, what really is after 40 years? But look, I think we should have a general consensus here that we basically want a country in which political parties, political pluralism, diversity, and tolerance actually prevails. I'm not quite sure that what we are seeing in this, especially creating people like the Crispus Kyongas making comeback, you know, at this time. 40 years, Kyonga actually won for, the only person who won for NRM, by the way, in 1980 in Kasese, you know, to his credit, the only seat. But Crispus Kyonga wants to come back. Some of the things that Sarah said. What exactly is it? So really, it is very much about now chewing, grab and rip, and compete with Pineti, compete with that woman in Atiak, compete with the Chogam guys, compete with the guys of Roko, compete with those guys that my sister-in-law, Betty Kamia, says that they take 10 trillion Uganda shillings, leveling it up. Some of the young people, as I said at the beginning, that is what is taking people to this thing. So it's a matter of life and death. And the other thing is, because Mr. Museveni is chasing Bia's age and they could retire involuntarily soon, you know, let's take what we can, because there is no other system, I hope, in this country that will allow the impunity that we've seen under Mr. Museveni. So pick it when it is still possible that this guy is still there. Meaning that some people even argue that even his other son of X, that if he became a leader, he may not tolerate some of the things of what his father, which is quite worrying. If you want to level up Museveni with his son, many people would rather have Museveni alive and struggling, controlling that place than his son. But that's a matter of public opinion, by the way, not Ochieno's opinion. So that's how bad it is. We hope that this process ends. We hope that people who lose in NRA look for Ochieno and join the UPC. But we hope those who remain there in civility. And we hope that, you know, George is making an important point. George is making some very nuanced point. I fundamentally disagreed with you almost outrageously earlier. But George is making a very important point that whatever happens, we need to learn lessons, you know, and somehow galvanize to agree that the mess in which we are, whatever name Ochieno uses, we need to find a way in which, going towards the elections, there is a Uganda post the next elections, and there's a transitional Uganda. And that's a transitional Uganda that Sarah and I, Sarah are special friends in a particular way, that we want with all of us to make sure that, you know, beyond 2026, Uganda survives for the majority of the people who are watching for us.
Thank you, Major. The winners and the losers.
Winners and losers, I really have my list of winners. But before I go to the list of winners, I want to comment about the poor turn-up in Kampala. It is what the party will study, especially Secretariat. Because we were thinking that, did we make a mistake not to have put this activity on a weekend? Are there working class who are working? That was our worry. But again, if experience proves that even the working class are not seen on the street, are they in offices or they didn't come? So that was our worry, but we shall have to study, and that is part of what George is saying, that we shall have to learn and see a lot. Because we were thinking that, did we herald by putting it on a working day? So that is what, so they turn up in Kampala, but we have the register. And the register, because this register, we tune it with a NERA data. Because we had said that, there were arguments that we print party cards. Then we said, but if people can forge dollars and even change in Forex Bureau, can forge 50,000 note and even cash, who will not forge a party card? We said, no, use the register, but since it has not been proved that the national ID is fraud-proof, tag the data, this body corpus, Okello Alfred, to its data in the NERA to find out that you are a human being. So we thought we had cleared that. So that is why we have confidence in the register, that we have tagged all the detail to the national ID. And we have that in Kampala. Now, if they have not turned up,
then it is a reason for investigation. The other thing I want to talk about is the persistent claim that NRM is a party for Mugati. I thought I considered this and I said yes. But if Mugati is being translated, if Mugati is being translated as mere bread bought from a shop or from a bakery, that is wrong.
Buffalo.
For us, Mugati, the bread we are talking about,
Buffalo.
for us, the bread we are talking about is meeting the interest of the people. And I've talked of interest ranging from security, interest ranging from sleeping at night, interest ranging from democracy, and interest ranging from job creation.
Madam Moderator, I've been
yes.
really perturbed. How
Yeah.
does a party cause sleep?
I
He
explained
explained it.
I
He
explained
gave the
it.
analogy of the
Professor, you did
Karamojo
not understand my
cattle
expla-
rustlers.
Unfortunately, Professor, of all the people who were listening, it is only Professor who didn't understand.
No, I cannot understand that.
Let me tell you this, Professor. We had war in the north. NRM people were in camp. They were not sleeping.
There is no war
But it was
now.
under
That is
NRM.
what we are saying. That is why it is. Remember, Acholi was voting for FDC. Now they changed from Acholi FDC to NRM because they are now sleeping. Basically, that is the Professor Ganya, the Okoto,
I think that is a
that.
tired explanation. Leave
Okay,
it.
No,
so
they
let's-
are sleeping.
I
Why
just-
tired?
It's
let's-
tired.
Why do you think that they are leaving FDC from Professor Ganya, Odongo, and all this Gilbert by changing to NRM by tired explanation?
It's Buffalo.
It is. So that's what I'm saying. If your literal translation of bread is bread, it is wrong. For us, a bread you are talking about is interest of the people.
Okay.
It is
Just
interest
carry
of
on,
the people. It is
carry
contained in
on,
the
carry on,
bread.
Major.
So people are coming for their interest. If you call the interest bread, then a beat it. If security is bread, then be it. If sleeping at night is bread, then be it. So people come for the interest. Now, losers. I would start first agree that the losers, we don't tag names. We are seeing conceptually, at the conceptual level,
Yeah, sure.
who has lost. First of all, we can't doubt that what part of the losers could be thieves. Winners. Part of the winners could be thieves. Because some people have used money, which is contrary to the law, and it is undue influence. Some of them will slip through, when in real terms, they are not good candidates. So those will appear like winners at the moment. But in that case, the genuine people lose, okay? But the other thing is, the country. Uganda promised, NRM promised the country of democracy, that democracy will be exercised. Now, at a party level, if we can see democracy being exercised at the party, all over the country wins. NRM, I agree with those who said NRM wins. We give the image as a democratic country, a party, we give the image that we don't self-appoint anybody. We give the image that everybody in the party is equal, like what Honorable Odongo said. When a new person joins, he has equal rights. That is the first thing you get when you join NRM. You have equal rights to anybody. So we win in this way. The other people who win are the people themselves. Do you know there's a common joke in the village where they say, we shall meet in the basin. We shall meet. They tell leaders, we shall meet in the basin. Meaning, we shall meet at the time of taking. So, if, for example, the rate of turnover, if out of 100% of the MPs, if they can remove, say 40 can lose and 60 win, it shows the people have power. And that's why the people are saying, we shall meet in the basin. In this case, the fact that people exercise their power and remove an honorable member and you become an ex-honorable member, that shows the people have power and the people would have won. Good candidates will win. Articulate candidates. It's not that not every person who uses money will win. Genuinely, they are going to come articulate good candidates who will appear on the floor of parliament, and you will see that, where has this one been hiding? So good candidates will win. So those are the list of my winners. The country, the party, the people who are going to exercise their power in the basin, because they even tell MPs these days, hey, you don't want to talk to us, we shall meet in the basin, saying they literally have their power. So the party, the country, the people, good candidates, with a few thieves who will also win. So these are the winners.
Thank you. And I'm told we're actually running out of time, so we need to wind up. So just very quickly, 1 minute each, your final thoughts or your conclusions as we wrap up from you.
Yeah, for people who are seeing things on the surface, the party primaries of the NRM can give them hope, and they say election has taken place. But for those who are thinking about posterity, I think we are still doing badly. In this 2025, people are fighting as if they are barbarians during the time of Stone Age. People who are educated are struggling. People have been MPs for 30 years, almost want to sacrifice their life for a position in parliament. I really think that the NRM needs to do three things. One, to organize their elections in a method that tallies with 2025, 2026. Number two, we should do, wherever we are, we should preach to people that leadership is about service, not to go and get some mugati, which is creating a lot of problems. And my major there is comfortable with it, but he doesn't know how that brings a problem in a country where people are fighting for mugati. Even if it is interest, the interests must balance. Number three, and the last one, I think we need to detach democratic elections or democratic practices from military fronts. The soldiers should go and do what they vow when they are being passed out to do, than shooting people and threatening. They make young people think that politics is a bad thing, especially soldiers who are not in uniform. These marauding people with guns, who mainly come from, they say for them they're fighting for NRM. It gives NRM a bad name.
Thank you, sir.
You see, the issue of interests, we should have national interests that everybody works to achieve or deliver to. But when you say individual voters have interests, individual parties, and I want to bring three examples. One example is the Heritage Oil case in the UK, where it went on an international court record that the Heritage Oil people were told that in order for them to have audience of the president, they should meet his small interest, immediate interest, which was money for campaigns. The Heritage Oil bribe case on record and unchallenged by Ugandan legal team. In the US, the bribery case of that Chinese that involved the then Minister of Foreign Affairs, one bribe for the minister, one bribe for the president.
The $500,000.
Interest. Very embarrassing. The UPDF amendment bill, according to the testimony of Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, who is a member of SEC, the top organ in the NRM, that they told the president to first meet the small interests of MPs so that the MPs can also meet his interest of the UPDF draconian bill. They are 100 million. So when I found out which is talking of interests, you people, you need to understand how dangerous this thing is. We should all have uniform interests as a country, and we should all work to achieve those interests as citizens in a collective. But this issue of small interest here, president bribery, president keep receiving bribe, also bribing, now bribing voter interests, Mugati, we are in trouble, you people.
George.
You know, I've been listening, but I don't know how an internal primary of NRM would end up with a non-NRM member. Because what we are saying here is that everything that has happened is wrong. We are talking about an internal primary whose outcome would be that one member would win. So whom did you expect to win? We go for an NRM primary and then you have an opposition winning. For it to be a win for the country. Maybe the framing of the question was wrong, of the discussion. But if the framing is right, this is an internal NRM primary. The outcome of it would be that one member of the National Resistance Movement would come out as the winner in that election. maybe what we should be discussing is the quality of that election. And say, okay, there were cases, there were incidents of violence here, which I think we should be very worried about.
I think we've also
And
talked
also-
about election quality and integrity
Yeah.
severally here.
Yes. So, but you see, where I'm finding difficulty is to suggest that the NRM primary in itself is a loss. Like if we had a primary of NRM, we would have had a NUP member
Nobody said
being,
that.
being voted, because that's the implication. But if it is an NRM primary and it is NRM members who have come up, then we should be looking at, maybe this question should now arise at the end when we are dealing with the final elections. When we are saying who is coming out and how many people are coming from the NRM and how many people are coming from the opposition.
We shall have that question as
Okay.
well at that time.
So for now, I want to say that the violence that we have seen in some of the constituencies within the NRM is an indictment on our own internal political process, but also generally to what Sarah and Doctor has been saying here, that we need to refine our democracy and make the competition free and fair, and away with violence, away with the use of disproportionate use of force, and also that the footprints of state institutions should really be, we need to deal with it. That's the elephant in the room, that we need to tell the institutions that are inclined to influence even just party elections that they have no business. Let that be a civil matter. Let it be for the ordinary citizens to determine who they want to represent them. They should not have decisions that are rammed down on their necks with guns on their heads, because these are people who know the candidates, and they will make their informed choices. And so that's the message that should really go out there. But overall, these elections should give us a pointer to what is coming in 2026, and that all of us actors should then be, activated to see that we play our role to make sure that we have an election that is truly representative of our views. And those elements of these primaries that have actually influenced in a negative way the conduct of these elections should be dealt with before we go into the 2026 elections. And we have to do it in a courageous way, both as a national resistance movement party, but also nationally with the national institutions.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph.
I have participated in elections, including in the Mother of Democracies, many times. I have participated in primary elections, and I'm saying this for the purposes of George and Sarah.
And George is very happy.
I can tell you that I have seen cases and situations where it is possible to have elections at a constituency level in which you don't basically use papers and you're in a room and your comrades in the same room, and it happens that it works. So my point here is that if that has happened, and if we've also gone through to national elections and you do not see soldiers on the streets, then I agree with you, George, that the next NRA primaries, wherever that happens, if anybody is a public governance minister, they should join the wish car, or if by then the railway line is working, they should travel by train to Kasese rather than using government vehicles. And that ministers, if the candidates, they should ask for a day off rather than using public resources. And if the members of parliament, that should not be counted as part of their parliamentary privileges. It should be about their party things. Because part of the argument is that we are focusing on any other thing. They're the governing political organization, and right now they've pulled the country to a standstill. Right now they put the country on a national security alert. I have an idea that you guys know that the national security is generally actually worried about this, to the extent that our police and soldiers are on major high alert because of this. So George, no, this is a national concern. It's a national concern because NRA, from the time that it came as a military thing in 1981 and 1986, has been a national disaster, has run this country militarily, continues to run militarily, and has perfected the art of militarism. And we're just praying that beyond here, we find a way in which we're able to detox this country of militarism. In any case, actually, when you guys talk about democracy, this is not a democracy. This is one-party military dictatorship, which we need to find a way in which we settle it and find a way in which we're able to go back to a democratic process in which some of these processes can be seen to be much more open, much more civil, no guns, no police officers in the streets, and certainly no soldiers in the street. I hope from here on that's where we'll be going.
Thank you. And lastly, you, Major.
Yeah, I just like to say that in conclusion that the issue of the point of departure was, are people joining NRM out of desperation or not? I said interest. Now, if there was a use of word interest in a court case in London, this is different from the party view of interest. The party view of interest is national. Remove the war from the north. That is not an individual thing. Let the greater north not have war. Let cattle rustling stop. Create PDM. Create employment. Create, those are the interests I'm saying. And I'm saying if people come for that, that is national interest. If you're saying it is for national interest, I agree it is for national interest. And if those national interests are symbolized by bread, so be it. Now, about the primaries, we have held these primaries. It took us a lot of time as top management because we are the designers, designing from the register and having people in the register, designing guidelines, which is approved by SEC. So I am part of those in the theater to do this. So whatever it has happened today, for us, it is a very, very good achievement. Of course, challenges are there, like the fighting that we witness and all that. But over and above, we have delivered as a democratic step, as a democratic exercise. If we have failed in logistical terms, for example, that we didn't deliver the election material in time, like there was a time I was on NBS, the material for Jumani, that is for General Moses Ali's place, was still in Yumbe, where you had to cross River Nile to come. So if we have had challenges in logistical, then we need to look forward and see how to do it better. But over and above this exercise of primary election, we call on other parties to be as transparent in choosing their candidates, not people to sit in a small room and choose. If that is what they prefer, to sit in a small room and choose their leaders, that is it. But we have done it, we continue to do it, but we shall build and close in gaps of weakness and promote our strong points.
Thank you very much. Sorry, you just have one thing to say?
Just one statement, that to give credit to NRM, for them they do primaries and they are open and we all discuss them. But why are they of interest to us as a nation, to us as people who follow matters democracy in the country? NRM is the party in power. If they don't have internal democracy, they cannot give democracy to the country. They cannot give what they don't have.
Thank you very much. And well, thank you to each of you for sharing your insights on this topical issue of the NRM primaries, who wins, who loses, and what it means for Uganda. Thank you, Dr. Robert Ojiambo, Dr. Sarah Bireete, Honorable George Odongo, Mr. Joseph Ochieno, and you, retired Major Awich Pollar. And to you, our viewers, thank you very much for staying with us up to this very end of the discussion. Do drop us a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you think. Be a part of the conversation also if you haven't already subscribed. And feel free to share our content on the various channels. My name is Judith Atim. I'm your host. Thank you very much. The Citizens Chat Show returns next week, same time. Until then, it is bye-bye from all of us.